Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome, everyone, to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. What are 3 moral guidelines that you would never break? Well, as far as moral guidelines, there's a lot more than 3. We look at the 10 yama niyam, or what sometimes in the West we call the yamas and the niyamas, but actually yama niyam, the do's and don'ts of a dharmic life, a yogic life. But 3, if I had to give 3, here's the 3s I would give. It actually comes from a very beautiful story, personal story. So I had been in India maybe 3-4 days, or in Rishikesh 3-4 days. Or actually, that's not right. I had been at the ashram for 3-4 days. I was in Rishikesh for a week before that. But I had been living at the ashram, staying here for 3-4 days. And so this goes back to September of 1996. Had been in India a total of maybe 2 weeks. A few days in Delhi, then a week in Rishikesh before I met Pujya Swamiji and started staying here. Then 3 or 4 days I'd been here. And I was in a state of just ecstasy, just spiritual ecstasy. Those of you who have known me for a while, or have listened to Satsang for a while, or have read my memoir, you know some of what those days were. I was just in ecstasy. And I said to Pujya Swamiji, 3rd or 4th day, I finally had the opportunity to actually meet with him, other than just in the big darshan that he gave. And you have to picture the scene, okay? I was a 25-year-old American student who had shown up with a backpack, knew nothing about India, nothing about Hinduism, nothing about anything. Had ended up at Parmarth because I had had this extraordinary experience of awakening on the banks of Ganga, and then had had these experiences making me know that I was meant to stay here. So I had heard a voice as I walked through the ashram one day. I then had my feet literally glued to the floor of the ashram a few days later. So I had all of these things happen that made me know this is where I was meant to be. But I didn't know why. I mean, none of it made sense. But as I said, it didn't matter. I was in ecstasy. So the scene is, I'm sitting in Pujya Swamiji's area, and we are alone. First time I had been alone with him. I'm 25 in just spiritual intoxication. And I say to him, I say, Swamiji, I feel so incredibly blessed. So incredibly blessed to be here for these experiences I'm having. I want to give something back. What can I give? What can I do? Please. So he looks at me and he says, anything? And now remember, I don't have any idea what sannyas means. I don't understand what orange robes mean, that it means celibacy. I don't understand. I don't know any of that. I'm just here in this spiritual intoxicated state, young, didn't know anything, but so touched that I wanted to offer something. Here we are, and he says, he was about 45 at the time. And he says to me, anything? And in my head, I can hear my mother saying, just leave. Just stand up and walk out. In the West, unfortunately, there isn't an understanding in so many places of the blessing, the divinity, the sanctity of a guru. There's a lot of skepticism, there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of negativity around that whole idea. So I can hear in my mind my mother's voice saying, just leave. But I knew in my heart that, yeah, whatever he asked, I would give him. Anything. So I say, yes, anything. And he looks at me, and he's looking straight into my eyes. It feels as though it's like burning this hole through me. And he says, you promise? And again, I can hear my mom screaming, and I can hear this very famous psychology teacher I had studied with at Stanford, who was the expert on cults and brainwashing and that kind of thing, and who had always warned us all about, religious organizations and anything. And I can hear now him yelling in my brain. I can hear my mother yelling in my brain. And they're both saying, just leave. Just stand up and walk out. But I knew. In the way that sometimes in our life we just know. It may defy everything we've ever learned. It may defy everything we've ever been taught or thought. But it is so true. And so true on such a deep level that nothing else matters. And so I knew, without a doubt, whatever he asked, yes, I promise I would give it. And I knew that. I had no idea what he was going to ask, but I knew I would give it. And so I say, yes, I promise. And the seriousness in his face then breaks, and he smiles, and he says, okay, 3 things. This brings us back to the 3 things of the question. He says 3 things. Number 1, get closer to God every day. He said, every day when you go to sleep, you should be closer to God than you were when you woke up that morning. He said, and serve the world. You've been so blessed with so much ability, so much opportunity, so much resources. You've been so blessed. Serve the world. And he said, and third, be happy. He said, any sadness you have, any anger you have, he said, give it to me. And he held out his shawl like this, and he said, anything you have, just give it to me. He said, but just be happy. And of course, aside from being 3 rules to live by, it was such an incredibly powerful experience to be in that situation where literally I would have given anything, and yet all he wanted from me was get closer to God, serve the world, and be happy. And so I've really taken those 3 things as, you could say, the three rules that I really live by, that I wouldn't break. Doesn't mean that there aren't moments that I'm sad or moments that I'm frustrated, but that underlying happiness, that underlying sort of fundamental joy as kind of a river that runs through my life has always stayed. So if I had to give only 3, those would be the 3. Get closer to God every day, serve the world, and be happy.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. He asked that all of our different religions, different paths of spirituality, religious paths, they all take us to God. He said, but the path seems very long. Isn't there some shorter path? Some shortcut to God? Absolutely. Bhakti. Love. Love is the shortcut to God. Because जब हम प्यार करते हैं तो automatically देखो जब हम बात करते हैं enlightenment, moksha, God realization, it's essentially two becoming one, right? The word yoga in Sanskrit, what we say in the West, yoga, but actually is pronounced yog. Literally the Sanskrit meaning, or the English of the Sanskrit, means union, to unite. And it's the union of this self, this lowercase s, this identity, with the Supreme Self, the capital S Self, the union of Jivatma and Atma. Or you could just say the union of yourself and God, but in God is also you. You are not separate from the divine. So it's a union of the you who thinks you're separate with that supreme you who is one with the divine. Essentially, you can think about it as a two becoming one. है ना? However, in love, two already become one. Though, if you want a shortcut ये है, प्यार. When you really love God, then you experience already that oneness with the divine. That experience of the lover and the beloved are one. There's no difference. And in that love of God, we may begin by loving God in a murti. Let's say in my temple I have a murti of the divine in some form. Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, Shankar Bhagwan, whatever murti maybe I have in my mandir. So maybe I begin by loving God in this form that seems separate from me. But as you love, as your heart opens, and you feel it, you feel that juiciness. जब हम रस कहते हैं ना, रस, bhakti ki ras, it's juice. It's juiciness. As we feel that juiciness of love for God, you feel it inside. You feel it in your heart. And you feel it चाहे आप मंदिर में बैठ रहे, चाहे आप kitchen में हैं, bathroom में हैं, बाहर हैं. Wherever you are, you feel that love. And as you feel that, wherever you are, तो फिर यही अनुभव आने लगता है. You start to realize that actually God is inside you. Because you're loving God wherever you are. And then you start to experience that oneness with the divine inside. And then as you love God, you start to see the divine in all. You begin, of course, with your loved ones. It's easier. But then slowly, slowly, in all, you start to see that divine wherever you look. Becomes just the divine. But it begins with love. When you love someone, really love someone, wherever you are, you're thinking about them, right? सामने है तो ठीक है, सामने नहीं है तो फिर भी मन है उनके साथ, दिल है उनके साथ. They're with you. And that experience of being with God all the time, it comes from love. Sadhana, सारे जो साधना हम करते हैं, sadhana does not bring God. Pujya Swamiji always explains this very beautifully. He says, sadhana is not bringing God. हमको लगता है कि मैं काफी ध्यान करूंगा तो फिर भगवान सामने आएंगे. That God will come because I am meditating. Or God will come because I'm doing japa. इतना जप किया कि भगवान को मतलब आना पड़ेगा. Right? या कहते मैं जप करते रहता हूँ लेकिन भगवान आते नहीं हैं. As though somehow your japa is what's bringing God. No. Pujya Swamiji says, he says God is always there. But what sadhana does is it cleans our glasses, cleans our windows, lets us see. जैसे सूरज हमेशा है, लेकिन अगर हम अंदर बैठे हैं, पर्दे बंद, तो फिर हम देख नहीं सकेंगे सूरज को. अंदर बैठ के हम सूर्य नमस्कार करेंगे, सूर्य का मंत्र बोलेंगे. We'll pray to the sun. We'll do our sun salutations. But the sun is already there. It's just that we're inside with our curtains drawn. So sadhana is that purifies our glasses, that cleans our window, that enables us to see what is already there, the divine that is already there. But if you love God, then you're already with God. फिर कोई पर्दा की बात होती नहीं है. When you're in love with someone, there's no curtain between you. There's no wall between you. You're just one. So your shortcut is to love God. And if you feel like that's difficult, because for a lot of us, the idea of just suddenly starting to love God, like especially if we don't think of God in a particular form, this idea of just suddenly being in love with this nameless, formless energy, it seems difficult sometimes. And so a really easy place to start is to choose anyone you really love. It can be a parent, a grandparent, your child, your best friend, your husband or wife. It could be the tree in your backyard. But choose someone or something you really love fully. And then ask yourself, is it just their body you love? Of course not. And if you've loved them for a lot of years, like children with parents or with grandparents or people who have been married a long time, think how many times the form has changed since you've loved them. But you keep loving them. Their body keeps changing, but you keep loving them. It's not the body you love. You may appreciate it. You may appreciate their beauty. But if they got in a car accident and their face got all messed up, you wouldn't stop loving them. Because what you love is their essence, their soul, their spirit. And that's God. If you're loving someone's soul, someone's spirit, someone's essence, what you're loving is God. If you only love their body, that's what we call lust. But if you really love their essence, they're in a good mood, a bad mood, looking good, not looking good, doing what you want, not doing what you want. But you keep loving them. What you're loving is essence. You're loving soul, you're loving spirit, which means you're loving God. So you can begin there. And then just keep paying attention to that divinity in them that you love. And through them, realize that you love God. And then start to see if you can love God in other forms as well. Slowly, 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 you'll increase the number of ways that you can love God. So that's the fastest and best shortcut that I know.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. Grief is not a problem to be solved. A lot of us think of our sadness, think of our grief as something that we're supposed to do something about. Grief is the very natural, very beautiful response to losing someone who you loved so deeply. It's not a problem to be solved. There isn't anything you have to do. It will take its own course, and all you need to do is allow it. The only wrong way to do grief is to tell yourself, you should be over it by now. Move on. Chalo, rone band kar do, aage badhao. There's no right amount of time or wrong amount of time to grieve. What happens though is our sadness, our loss, makes other people quite uncomfortable because nobody wants to think about death. It's very easy to move through the world as we live it, feeling like we are invincible, it's never going to happen. I don't have to think about it. Well, agar aap mere samne hain, and you are in grief because you've lost someone, that makes me very uncomfortable because I don't want to think about death. So I'm going to tell you, Hare, it's okay, don't worry. Stop crying. Chalo movie mein chale. I want somehow to make you stop grieving so that I feel better in the moment. As a community, we really need to get over our own fear of death. It's going to happen. It's the only non-negotiable. It's the only guarantee. Whatever your stars are, whatever your horoscope is, however much money you make, whatever mantra you chant, whoever your guru is, whatever mandir you go to, whatever you do, you will die. And your loved ones will die. It is the only guarantee. And so first, as a community, we need to be able to support each other in grief without trying to put a lid on someone else's sadness because it makes us uncomfortable. And then all you need to do is allow yourself, allow the grief to take its own course, because what you'll realize is grief doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you're really honest and present and open with the emotions, what you'll find is there's a wave of grief. As you think about her, you mourn her. And then as her face is in your eyes, there's this wave of joy. Because you see her and you feel her and you remember her and you love her. And then maybe even there's a wave of laughter. Maybe there's something that seeing her makes you think of and you laugh. And then maybe there's a wave of anger. Why did God take her so soon? Why didn't she take better care of her health? Why didn't she wear her seatbelt? All of these sorts of very natural feelings when we've lost someone. And then it'll be a wave, again maybe of joy, again of grief. They actually just keep moving. And when you're open with them, you'll feel them move from one end to the other. And all you have to do is be present. What's going to happen eventually is, it's not that you get over her. It's that your experience of who you are changes and expands to include her as well. And so you'll feel yourself changing and expanding. And that presence of her is now part of you. And this is the other really critical piece, because a lot of people will tell you, they're gone, just get over it. But if you close your eyes, you may be able to see her. You may be able to hear her inside. Not everyone can, that's okay. Many people can. At times maybe you can, at times you can't. But I would imagine that there are times where you can close your eyes and see her. Times you can be quiet and hear her. Times you feel her there. And that's beautiful. Because the truth is, her essence is still here. No, she can't sit next to you in the car on pilgrimage. No, you won't hear her voice necessarily in the way she spoke, or give her body a hug, sit across from her over a cup of tea or a meal. But ultimately, her essence is still here. What you loved was not her body. I mean, you may have also appreciated her body, but it wasn't that you loved her elbow, or you loved her knee, or you loved her leg, or her arm, or her nose, or her shoulder. You loved the essence of who she was. That soul, that spirit, that being. And actually that's still here. And it's also really important to allow ourselves to feel that, to know that essence is still here with you. And as you go on pilgrimage, talk to her. That essence is still there. She's still with you, just in a different form. You were babies. Each of you has changed form so many times. Right? What she looked like when you were a baby was very different from what she looked like at 10 or 20, 30, 40. But you loved her and you recognized her throughout all of these transformations. Well, she's just had another transformation of form. Now it's one you can't see with these two eyes. But it doesn't mean she's gone. My favorite story about this is when Paramahansa Sri Ramakrishna Ji passed away, had Mahasamadhi. And his wife was just trying to remove the bangles that she wore. You know, when you become a widow, you're supposed to remove the bangles. But they had gotten married when she was very young, so her wrist was tiny. So now she couldn't get the bangles over her adult woman's hand. So she goes to take a hammer to break the bangles. And suddenly she hears his voice, Sharda, what are you doing? I haven't gone anywhere. I've only moved from one room to another room. And so there's two things to do. One is just allow your grief. However it is, it's tears, it's joy, it's laughter, it's tears, it's joy, however it moves. It's solitude, it's wanting companionship. It's going to take a lot of different forms. It's going to hit you at all kinds of unexpected times and unexpected ways. A sight, a sound, a smell. And you just have to be present with it. Don't try to push it away. Just allow it. And simultaneously, the other to do is focus on feeling her in ways that are much more subtle than you've ever used. Focus on knowing her with ways of knowing that you're not used to using. Inner eyes, inner ears, inner ways of knowing. And not only will that bring her closer to you, but it'll also deepen your own experience of yourself.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with Inspiration and Transformation. Is suffering a necessary part of the human condition? What would people who never suffered be like? It's a bit of a trick question. And I mention that because on the one hand, is it a necessary part of the human condition? Yes, pretty much. And yet, the whole point of our spiritual practice, our sadhana, our yoga, whether the path of Jnana Yoga, the path of Bhakti Yoga, the path of Karma Yoga, the path of Raja Yoga, whatever path of yoga we're walking, ultimately the goal of all of that is the alleviation of suffering, because it alleviates that within us that causes the suffering. So as long as we are mired in aspects of the human condition like our egos, like our false identification, then yeah, we're going to suffer. Suffering is an emotional experience. A lot of people think pain and suffering is the same thing. So the first part is to understand that while pain is almost inevitable, not 100%, there must be some people who have never experienced, a stomach ache or a headache, or who have never broken a bone or cut themselves. It's probably really rare. But that's pain. That's a very physical reaction of our sensory neurons of different parts of the body sending a message into the brain that gets understood as pain. It's that which causes us to pull our hand off of a hot stove, right? If that hot stove didn't hurt, we wouldn't be able to pull our hand off fast enough to prevent burning the entire hand away. It's that immediate instinct of pain that causes us to pull the hand away. But suffering is the emotional response that says, that's not fair. Why me? Why did this have to happen? Now I'm not going to be able to play the game of baseball that I wanted to play. I'm not going to be able to write the things I wanted to write. I'm not going to be able to do the things I wanted to do because I've burned my hand. Suffering is the emotional drama that goes along with the pain. So pain is almost inevitable. Suffering, as long as we are living as that ego, living as this sense of my identity being my physical body, being my role, being my career, being what I look like, being my relationships, being my ego. Well, inevitably, things are not always going to go the way I want them to. People won't be nice to me, they won't respect me, they won't treat me the way I want them to treat me. I will be very nice to people. सबके लिए मैं सब कुछ कर लूँगी और फिर मेरे से ठीक से बात भी नहीं करेंगे. मैंने सब किया उनके लिए, ठीक से बात नहीं कर सकते क्या? But you see that suffering, it's in the mind. I've created it. So we almost all suffer because we almost all are identified as these stories, as these identities, as these bodies. And so we want people should be nice to us, they should be respectful, they should treat us the way we want them to. The universe should act according to the way we want it to. And when it doesn't, we suffer. We suffer anger, we suffer jealousy, we suffer frustration, we suffer grief. But the freedom from suffering lies in recognizing that we are not. We're not the physical body. We're not the story. We're not the personality. We're not that identity. We're not our bank account. We're not all of these ways that we identify. And also by realizing that we're whole, we're full. So I suffer because I feel like I'm lacking. I need your approval because I feel on some level like I'm lacking. I need you to tell me I'm beautiful because I don't know it. I need you to tell me I'm wonderful because I don't know it. I need you to love everything I post on social media because if you don't, then I forget I exist. I need you to always respect me, love me, appreciate me, because then then I'll realize and remember I'm a worthwhile human being, that I deserve occupying my place on planet Earth. You see where that leads us almost immediately and inevitably into suffering, because not everyone's going to tell you you're beautiful or wonderful. Not everyone's going to appreciate you. Not everyone's going to love and share your posts on social media. And if I need all of that, if I need on a more serious level the universe to give me what I want, when I want it, how I want it, the money, the success, the health, the relationships, that which I think I should have, if I don't get it, I'm going to suffer. But we realize that all of that suffering is because I don't realize how full I am. That I think that somehow my fullness requires a particular job, a particular relationship, a particular appreciation or respect or love from the community. And this is where our sadhana is so important. Because then we realize I don't need the universe to dance according to my tune. So someone who doesn't suffer, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks so beautifully about what the yogi is like, what the wise one is like. Well, the wise one, the yogi, is one who doesn't go up and down as the world goes up and down. Pleasure, pain, success, failure, gain, loss. The yogi is stable. In fact, there's a beautiful line that says yoga is the cessation of, the breaking of, the union with suffering. So yoga is that which helps us break that union that we have with suffering, because it shows us the truth of who we are. And then suddenly, regardless of what's happening in the world around me, I'm able to stay anchored and grounded and peaceful and joyful, because that's my nature. So it's why we meditate. It's why we do yoga. We also realize that inevitably in our lives things are not going to go the way we want them to. And as long as I'm attached to that, then suffering becomes inevitable. A lot of us think, well, if I'm going to stop suffering, I just have to figure out how to make everyone do what I want. If you ask a lot of people, "Acha, kya hua aapko?" What happened? Why are you sad? Why are you frustrated? They'll tell you, because so-and-so did such and such. Because my husband, my wife, my child, my mother, my father, my boss, my employee acted in this way. वो मुझसे ठीक से बात नहीं करते, अपने काम ठीक से नहीं करते, जो मन में आते वही करते, सोचते नहीं है. So we suffer because we have an agenda. कि जिस तरह से मुझे लगता है कि सब चीज़ होना चाहिए, वैसे होना चाहिए. When it doesn't happen, I suffer. But yoga, remember, is the breaking of that union with suffering. Because it's a breaking of the attachment to ignorance. It's the breaking free from the ignorance into the truth. When we pray, asatoma sadgamaya tamso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. When we are led from falsehood to truth, from darkness to light, from this identification as the one who is born, who changes, who dies, to the awareness that we are one with infinity, will we stop suffering? So is it inevitable if we're human? Yes and no. Yes, if we think that we are only human, but no, if we realize that we are actually the divine having a human experience. The divine in a human incarnation. Then we have the possibility of breaking free from suffering. But lastly, I would say, the human condition itself, there's something very, very beautiful about it. Even though, yes, we are taught, work for this moksha so that we don't have to keep coming back, that we're just one with God, no more human incarnations. And yet, if you think about it, there's something very precious, very beautiful about the human heart, about the heart that loves and then suffers, that loves and then grieves when we lose. And as we are walking our path of enlightenment, our path of realization, of awakening, it's also very beautiful to realize, here I am in a human incarnation with a human heart that loves. And where there's love, in a human way, not just love for the divine, but when there's love in this very human way, there's going to be grief. We get beyond the grief because our loved one doesn't dance according to our tune, but there's grief when there's loss. There's grief when there's illness. There's grief when there's passing. And there's suffering that goes with that. And in cases like that, the suffering simply means you've loved with a human heart. Not just as the divine loving the divine, but you've loved as a human loving a human. And therefore now you are grieving as a human who has lost a human. And there's also something very beautiful and very precious about that. Something very beautiful to be experienced and learned in that as well. So, yes, we move forward from suffering. But also, yes, we, along the way, acknowledge and touch that very humanness within us that loves and cares and yearns and therefore suffers.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.